No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey everyone, this is Chris.
And Lorenzo.
And welcome to our Best of Saturday series. Now that we have hundreds of episodes, we get a lot of listeners asking us where to start.
So we'll be selecting some of our most popular episodes to share each Saturday from our years of podcasting. We hope you enjoy it.
Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
Happy New Year, Lorenzo.
Happy New Year, 2021.
Yeah, I saw a meme that said that if you think that all of 2020's problems are going to go away just because it's 2021, you're going to have a bad time. and I kind of chuckled about it because it's true. You know, we put a lot of that. You know, 2020 got a real bad rap, and I get it. Like a lot of stuff happened in 2020, but the timeline of them getting solved or fixed or working through them has nothing to do with what that calendar says. It has to do with how we work with each other and how, you know, we get through things with our loved ones and our coworkers and stuff like that. And that could look like 2021 or it might not.
What are you talking about, dude? At midnight, literally, I lost 30 pounds and had $1 million added to my bank account. It just literally happened on January 1.
What the heck? I missed the sign up on that one.
Yeah, no, to your point, man, it's just another day. I think obviously the significant idea of a new year is going to help people to really kind of, you know, focus and that type of thing. And I know like what we do with our podcast, you and I spoke literally on New Year's Eve about finalizing our strategy for 2021. And so I think that for a lot of people, that's what that is. It's just it's a reminder. It's a new year. It's a new way to refresh and, you know, kind of step into the game and do something a little bit different. And to your point, work on the things that maybe weren't great in 2020, but at the end of the day, it's going to take work to get out of everything that you want to get out of. And, you know, it'll take, determination and grit and perseverance to get the things done that you want to get done.
I completely agree with that. I was looking at an article on Reddit, on the leadership thread of Reddit that I thought was interesting. And it was talking about that the title of the article says, "Did an email make you angry or frustrated? Don't respond yet." And I thought that's interesting, and I started reading through it. And it's less about the email itself, or the article itself is less about leadership advice and more about, you know, kind of interpersonal relationship advice on how to respond to emails and how not to respond to emails. But it did get me thinking about the way in which leaders communicate in general, and how we convey the things that we want to convey, and the appropriate or inappropriate ways to do that. And so could it be, you know, how would you communicate a strategy to a team of people? How would you communicate that someone didn't get a role they interviewed for? How would you communicate to your boss's boss's boss? You know, would you walk up and knock on their door? You know, what are the ways we communicate and the tools we have available to us? And are there kind of social mores and kind of things that we need to keep in mind when it comes to communicating as leaders? So the first thing I'll ask you is, have you ever communicated something as a leader and then not right afterwards, but how things played out led you to believe, you know, maybe there was a different method of communication I should have chosen instead of the one that I used?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, many examples, specifically when it comes to, you know, email and text messaging. I think when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're talking to somebody, there's a lot of context there. There's a lot of back and forth. There's the physical element of, you know, maybe how you're saying something, and they can read into that. When it's, you know, flat and it's just email or text message, it can definitely go sideways quickly. Or there can be a level of urgency that was assumed and not expected. That can happen quite a bit. But I think to your point that, like, yeah, especially in leadership, there are just some things that, you know, I think that I rarely use always and never.
Right.
But I think that you should never do as a leader. Like you mentioned earlier, kind of the idea of a turn down.
Sure.
If somebody interviews with you for a job, and you speak to them, you talk to them about an interview, and they do not get that job, text message is probably not the best way to let them know that. It should be some type of conversation, whether it's you or another hiring manager or somebody else involved in the process. Somebody should tell them they didn't get a job. It would not be cool if you and I spoke 2 days ago about a job you wanted, and my response a couple days later was like, "Hey, Chris, ... FYI, you didn't get the job, but great convo, ... crying emoji. sorry, have a great day, happy face. Like, not a good move from a communication standpoint, specifically when it comes to things like turn downs.
I agree with that. I think I got some advice a long time ago that I thought was really profound, and I didn't realize it was profound when I got it. And then did things against this advice for a long time, for years afterwards, until I realized that, I was burned by it. And I thought, okay, this is the importance of this advice. And the advice I gave was to put anything electronic through the Times Square filter. And what that means is, somebody said to me once, don't ever put anything in an email or a text message that you wouldn't feel comfortable with showing up on the Jumbotron in the middle of Times Square at some point in the future. Anytime in the future, this may show up on that. Would that make you go, ooh, I don't want that to happen? Well, if the answer is yes, it doesn't belong in an email anyway, period, no matter what. And that's a really, really tough bar, because there are things that email is so expedient for. There are times when we are working and the person that we're communicating to is not working, or vice versa. And email is a really great way to do that. Sometimes text messages. But it can be a really easy trap to fall into, to use it because of its expediency, when the results of it, or the fallout from not having the face-to-face conversation or putting something in email can make it not worth it anymore. Conversely, there are times when I have communicated something to somebody in person and given them the benefit of the doubt that they would take it and run with it and do the right thing. And then when it didn't go right, there was questioning on my leadership as far as, well, where we don't see any, they said they didn't get anything. They didn't have a clear understanding of what was going on. It's your job to make sure they have a clear understanding. At that point in time, I would have really loved to be able to say, hey, check out this email that I sent that has the clear understanding in it and that lays out the plan. So again, I've been tripped up both ways. And if I look back on the times when that has happened, where I have been tripped up, most of the time, for lack, no pun intended, hindsight is 2020. I can look back and go, yeah, I probably should have considered this potential and done it a different way, but it just wasn't something that I thought about in the moment.
Yeah, no, and I think, where I'm guilty of this many times, and I think it speaks to the importance of giving people context, is like sending a text message or something and saying, hey, when you get a chance, will you do this thing, or will you reach out to this person? Right. And as a leader of people, when I send that message to somebody, most of the time there's this urgency to get it done right now.
Right.
Like, when you get a chance, like I meant like today, tomorrow, maybe this week, like whenever you get a chance, like not within the next 5 minutes here,
sure.
But because I'm a leader of people, because I'm responsible for people, because I'm responsible for a business, that action tends to happen very, very quickly. So I have to be, if I'm going to ask for something like that, where it's not a phone call, because to your point, like I think text message is very helpful in the ability of getting communication out either to a group of people very quickly, or while it crosses your mind very quickly. But I think now with all of the wearable technology, what used to be I'll check on my phone when I get a chance, is now like my wrist is vibrating, my ears are making noise. Like, there's so many things to alert you to a text message or an email that it now becomes more urgent because you're getting it in real time. But now I've learned I have to give more context. Hey, would you mind getting this knocked out, by end of day today? Or, when you get in tomorrow, will you take a look at this? Like, I have to add more information to my request to not, have that urgency come across when it comes to written communication. And of course, but in this day and age, and especially now with so much going on, continuing with kind of work from home and remote working, it's even less time that you still have to get face to face with people. So if you're still trying to maintain social distancing, if you're wearing masks at work, what's weird is you may feel like, I'm going to have that conversation with that person. Well, the minute you put a mask on your face and their face, you have a hard time reading what they're thinking anyway. Like, it's
right.
Like you lose a lot of the elements of the facial emotion and things like that in that dialogue. So I think that there's a lot more context that's going to have to be shared this year more than ever, which I think can be helpful. It might be a little bit annoying, but at the same time, I think it'll be more helpful for getting people to get the real message of what you're trying to portray.
I really like what you said about the context of where the message is coming from, and not just what the message is too, and the things that we can overlook because of the roles that we have. And so I'll go back to being a 17 years old at home and saying to my dad that I was thinking about, driving out to, go see a concert in downtown LA. And the response from him is, you do what you do what you want. And me thinking, oh, that means I get to do what I want. It's like, no, who said it to you? There's the context to what that means of you do what you want. That maybe I should think twice about actually doing it. Does do what you want mean go do what you want? Or does do what you want mean this is a test to see if you're going to do what I want you to do anyway? And it's the exact same thing. You send a message to somebody on your team and the context is, oh, Lorenzo asked me to do it. I need to get it done right away. And even though the words said when you get a chance, the subtext, because of who you are and the relationship you have with that person, might lead them to think that they need to do it right away. Even if it's a great relationship. And that's the thing, is that it's not just, if this is happening, it doesn't mean that you don't have a good relationship with a person. It could mean you have a great relationship with them and they're trying to do right by that relationship. And sometimes you have to be very clear on, no, this is not what I mean by that. I mean it in a different way. I don't mean it right now. I understand. I don't know when you're working next or what you're doing at the moment because we're all working remotely anyway. So I want to make sure it's important that you know that this doesn't mean right now. It means, the deadline is this, whatever that is, a week from now, 5 days from now, sometime between now and then is fine. And sometimes we need that context to go along with it, even when the relationship is strong.
No, you're right. And as you were saying that, I was realizing, you know what? I probably need to also limit how much I like to mess with people, where like I'll send the text message and then there won't be any response for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'll send another message. It's like, are you okay? Should I send emergency services? Is everything all right? Knowing that they might be doing something that's kind of important and that I'm just completely making their wrist or their phone go crazy and vibrate just for the sake of having nothing better to do. So like I probably need to tone that down a little bit if I'm going to expect them to take their time in responding to me. But hey, you know what? Like that's the beauty of technology sometimes and having fun with your team. As you were saying, I was like, that probably doesn't help at all. The fact that if they don't respond, I start messing with them. And now I will say this though, if it is urgent, if it is something that there is something going, I will say that. I'm really good at being like, hey, FYI, this is what's going on. I need a response quickly here. Let me know if you can. And again, like that's only if I can't make a phone call. If I can make a phone call in those situations, I will call them. Otherwise, I'll send a text message, and I'll say something like, "Hey, if you can't respond, call me quickly with any questions." Like I'm good at that type of thing, but probably my constant trolling of my team and having a good time at their expense is probably not helped me in that situation.
I like that you brought that up because I think when we talk about different communication styles, I know a lot of people who their default is humor. They use humor in a lot of instances, and the reason they do it is to lighten the interactions. There's a grounding that you can give to your team if they can see you as a person who doesn't take themselves too seriously, and if you can use humor to lighten up the mood, then you can come off as not taking yourself too seriously. Where that can become a pitfall for a lot of people is in this transition away from where we're seeing everybody every day and we're getting the context of the face-to-face interaction where humor is very apparent, and a lot of our communication has moved from in-person to electronic. And if we use the same amount of humor, if the context is lost, then it can come off as serious when it's really not. And I look at things like, so my kids are using their iPads to communicate with people a lot right now, and we control what's on there, the apps that are on there. There's a Facebook Messenger application that lets us control what friends they have and who they can talk to, and it's fantastic for controlling who they're talking to. But there have been probably 3 or 4 times since March when this whole thing started where my wife and I have gone through and looked at their conversations, because we try to monitor that stuff, and the things that we see that they have said or received from other people, I read them and I think, why on earth would you text that to a person? And it comes from this standpoint of like, I know how I interpret what this emoji is versus and the people that I would send it to, that they would interpret it differently. The mind of a group of 7-year-olds and 9-year-olds, they might interpret things differently. And so things that they say that to me would come off like, oh my gosh, they're really angry at this person, It's like, well, no, they're not. They were just chatting. And I had to look further in the conversation to see what that context was. But it like makes my heart skip a beat a little bit, because there are things that I would never send to somebody in a text message, but apparently this is just, they're figuring out what this looks like for them. And I think that context is important, that you have to figure out what this relationship looks like between you and everybody that you work with, whether they report to you or they're your peer or that you report to them. And the context of what that looks like and the types of communication you use, the ways in which you communicate via email or text message or phone call or in person, they matter. And they have implications, and they bring with them consequences. Consequences can be positive or negative, but they bring with them consequences that that you'll have to consider when you're making the decision, how do I reach out to this person? How do I communicate this thing to this person?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And with that, it brings us to this episode's 1 Minute Hack.
The 1 Minute Hack.
All right, for this episode's 1 Minute Hack, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down on a piece of paper the 3 kind of buckets of the ways we communicate. And those buckets are via in-person or voice or in writing. And writing would include emails and text messages. Voice would be over the phone, obviously, and then in person is in person. And I want you to start writing down the different ways that you communicate, the different things you have to communicate. Turning down people for jobs, you getting strategy across to your team, accountability issues, working with your peers on how to move forward on a specific issue. All of these different things that we use communication for, and start bucketing them underneath what you kind of think is the general appropriate way to communicate this, via it with writing or with voice or in person. And the importance of doing this prior to an actual issue coming up is that you're not kind of steered by the sense of urgency of what's going on and choosing the expediency of something that should be different because this is just the easiest thing to do right now. Start putting those things under those 3 different categories, and you'll start to be able to look at them as like, oh, this falls under this category. That means it should be this. I know my inclination was to do it this way, but I know when I didn't have this incident going on, I would have done it a different way. So that means the right way is this different way, the way I said I was going to do it. If you start from that standpoint, you'll start to be able to hone this over time and realize the right ways to send things via email or text message or voice or in person.
No, I think it's a great idea, and it's always good to take a second to reflect and consider, how you see things, even though many of those things may be ingrained over time, and you're just like, oh, well, that's exactly what I would do this time. Like, if you've never taken the time to sit back and think about it, you may never question yourself on why you've made that decision, or maybe where you got that from, or who you copied that from, and is that the best decision that can be made in regards to your communication style. One other thing I would add at the end of the episode here, for those of you that made it through, speaking of email and communication, thank you for so many of you that have signed up for our email list on hackingyourleadership.com. If you have not yet, please check out the website and sign up for the email list. We have some really, really cool things coming out this year, and probably the next couple of weeks here. Some different platforms that we're doing, more content that we're putting out, and we're going to be utilizing that email list to ask for your help in getting some content together. So if you get a chance, again, go to hackingyourleadership.com. You'll see a little place to sign up for the email list. Go ahead and do that for us. And then we're going to be communicating out in the next week or so here some of the really cool things we have going on. And like I said, we're going to ask for your help. So for those of you that have made it this far into the show, which is most of you when we look at the data, thank you so much. But check that out. It's going to be something that's really, really cool. And as Chris and I have discussed, how do we continue to add more relevant content for all of you? And what platforms do we want to use going forward, and some of those types of things. We always want to include our listeners in what we're doing, and we want to make sure that we're talking about things that matter to you most.
Yeah, and I know this doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. We're not going to abuse it either. Like, your information will never be given to anybody else, and you're never going to get 7 emails a day from us, or even probably more than 1 or 2 a week at the most. This is to let you know what's going on, and there'll be an easy way to stop getting them if you want to not get them anymore. Again, this is not about trying to solicit things to you or market to you. It's about just making sure that you're able to meet us where you want to meet us and consume the content that you want to consume.
Absolutely. And as what we did earlier in 2020, where we were doing kind of Pay It Forward Fridays and Talent Tuesdays and all this different types of content. A lot of what we wanted to do was to discuss and talk about relevant leadership topics, but also highlight people that are out there doing things in the leadership space that we think you should also check out. So just kind of a little bit of a heads up on what we're looking for and how you can help us. But But to underline Chris's point, this is simply to give you some heads up on some content before it drops, but also to ask for your help in collaboration in continuing to build our content for our shows and where we go from here.
Yeah, this is all good stuff, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen with this show in 2021, and I know that all of our listeners are too.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. This is Hack Your Leadership. I'm Lorenzo.
And I'm Chris.
And we'll talk to you all next time.